My name's John Fine. I'm Director of Author and Publisher Relations for Amazon. It's a varied job, but really what I'm focused on most of the time is working with authors and working with the publishing community. And when I say authors, I think I already want to expand that to say storytellers, because that's really what we're talking about here. I want to step right into it. This is the goal. It's aspirational, to be clear. And really, better put, it should say every story ever written in any language, in every format, all available in less than 60 seconds. And it really is a driving force for us. It's what we think about when we're thinking about storytelling, authors, and readers. Again, it's aspirational. We're never going to get there. But it's our credo. And it's a great sort of defining dynamic aspect, way of thinking about what we want to do. The larger way that we think about this stuff, I really hate microphones. More books, more people, more ways. And now it's more books, more people, by more people. So the idea is to have something for you guys to work with at every stage of your career as a storyteller. Whether you're an aspiring writer, whether you are a success as a traditionally published author, whether you're stepping out and creating your own imprint, whether you're pulling back your rights and going it on your own, every step of the writing and publishing process and the marketing process, and all of that is really the idea is to give you an end-to-end opportunity to cover everything. This is just meant to be a list of the different things we're doing these days. And it's not even comprehensive. You're going to hear more about some of these things as we go along. But every single one of these programs is focused on authors and giving them a way to tell their stories. So that includes all the way down to Goodreads, all the way up to Amazon Publishing and its more traditionally oriented imprints, Kindle World's Storyfront, Day One, which is our great new literary journal that comes out weekly, based in New York, a new short story, a new poem, and a new actual piece of art every week delivered to your Kindle. Kindle singles, you know, one of the great things about this technology and the means of production being democratized is what had been an economically often challenging market for shorter works, be it fiction or nonfiction, have really been revitalized through platforms like Kindle, because it's just so easy to get the work out there and so easy for people to read it. CreateSpace, Kindle Direct, I'll talk about those in more detail. You'll hear more about Audible and ACX, which I'm going to talk about briefly myself too, because I think it's such a harbinger for the future of how stories are going to be created and shared and molded by a host of folks, helping authors get their works out there. Our author page, Author Central, which is sort of our portal for folks who have books out there, providing you with information about sales and tools and our programs to help you sell more books. Look inside the book, which is actually, to me, one of the most important things you can do in this world these days, and I'll explain why. It has to do with metadata. I'll save that to the end so that we don't lose you now. Virtual hand selling, that's all those recommendation engines you see on our site. It's a whole list of things. I get to give money away to great nonprofits that are helping create new authors and helping authors create new stories. Again, it's all about more people, more books, more ways. And really what I've seen over the last 5 years in this role in particular, and I spend most of my time speaking at conferences, again, you might not know that, might not be able to tell, is how awesome I think it is these days to be an author. And I was saying that before the Lego movie came out. And I'm sorry if that song is now in your head. It is going to be in your head. It's really amazing. And it's not just what I see in terms of the technology. I've been traveling the world over the last 5 years, talking to authors. And the mood is remarkable. There is a sense of optimism that is truly impressive. And it's not easy to be an author. I mean, I've never written a book. In my mind, I relate it analogously to giving birth, though I haven't really done that either. But in terms of creating a child, a baby, that is yours, that you want to make sure is well taken care of, whether you give it to an agent, whether you give it to us, whether you give it just to your friends. And so it's very hard, and it's never been easy. And there's been talk over the last few months in particular about the terrific opportunities for self-published authors to make money, and lots of it. You know, it's never been a fast path to riches to be an author. Let's just be clear about that. And I'm not seeing that changing much. But what I am seeing changing is the structure of publishing. Not just direct empowerment of authors, because now they can publish on their own and get more money, though it's not easy. But also because that leverage, that empowerment is changing the more traditional structures of publishing. And I see this. I used to be head of legal at Knopf. And I see this even at Random House. As they roll out new imprints, they're doing things like paying their authors more frequently. I mean, how ridiculous is it to get paid twice a year at the end of the 6-month period following the period before? We pay monthly. And other publishers are starting to see they need to increase their attention to author needs. They need to provide their authors with more information. Because at the end of the day, every author is a self-published author once the book hits the stands. You have to work your butt off. Yeah, if you're the #1 title on Knopf's list, maybe not. But even if you're in the middle of Knopf's list, you're going to have to work your butt off if you want to find an audience. And so that's why I say all of this stuff, as publishers recognize this, all of this technological change, all this opportunity that's been created is really, I think, transforming the industry into not about publishing, but about storytelling. Thinking about publishing from an author's perspective. So with that, though, with that, a great, I think, opportunity is a bunch of responsibilities. And I really want to stress this. And this room is filled with professional writers. So I feel comfortable you know this, but it's worth saying again. I did a panel 5 years ago at BEA, which is the big publishing expo in New York. And it was the first panel really on self-publishing, and we had 3 folks up there who had been sort of pioneers, very successful. One was Joe Conrad. And at the end, I said, what, in 30 seconds or less, would you recommend to this audience so that they can be standing up here next year? And Joe really, very briefly, which was shocking, he said, don't write shit. I can't stress this enough. Not only is it is amazing that you can put a story up there. If you want to succeed, don't write shit. You can write shit if you want and get it up there. And that's one of the beauties of this, right? The means of production have been democratized. But I actually think we have a responsibility. You have a responsibility as storytellers to make the stories good. I am sick and tired of hearing, oh, there are too many books now, too many stories now, and the quality isn't good enough. I don't buy that. There were plenty of shitty books before self-publishing came along. So I just want to urge folks, yes, you have this opportunity, but treat it with respect. And you can. I mean, one of the other great aspects of this democratization, challenging at first, a lot of my colleagues lost their jobs at traditional houses. Great marketers, great cover designers, great copy editors, great developmental editors. They are now freelancing. And for many folks who couldn't get access to that pool of terrific talent, unless they got a great deal from a great house, those folks are now out there. So you don't have an excuse not to make it as good as you can. And I mean every part of it. And if you're putting your book up there, you want it to look professional. You want a great cover. You want great cover copy, in addition to a great book. So the other thing you're going to have to do, and again, this is true for everybody, I think, these days, is you're going to have to promote yourself. And you're going to have to work hard to do it. And it's going to depend on the type of book, the audience you're looking for. I don't know whether you should tweet or Facebook or blog. I don't. And I think the most important thing you can do in terms of figuring that out is thinking about, okay, what's my story? Who's my audience? Who's going to want to read this book? And then figure out how do you find those people. And many have gone before you and have tread that path. And one of the other most remarkable opportunities and responsibilities I think authors have is to give back to the community of authors. One of the other incredible, I've never seen a group of authors more concerned about helping each other, successful, aspiring, I was just at the Romantic Times conference, which is basically romance writers and their fans, probably about 2,500 of them. And I've never seen a community of authors more focused on helping each other. So that's one of the other responsibilities that I should add to that bullet, to that slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all the opportunities that, or some of them, that we've got. Beth is going to go into much more detail about ACX, I think. Yes. So I won't spend too much time on there, but it's such an incredible program that I love using it as an example of how the industry is changing so much. So first of all, things are good. People are buying books, and I used to say people are reading books. I don't know if they're reading them. But we're seeing continued growth in Kindle books sold and physical books sold. And I don't really care what you read or what you listen to, as long as you're reading or listening to a story. There's so much other stuff that people can be doing right now with that object in your pocket, your phone. It's amazing to me that books are not only holding their own, but I think growing in terms of importance, when people could easily play video games, listen to music, watch a movie. And again, that's why you can't write shit, right? There's a lot of other stuff people can be doing. The other thing we know is that when people do buy the Kindle, they tend to buy almost 5 times more books than they did before, which is awesome. I think everybody here knows that. You don't have to buy a Kindle to read Kindle books. And pretty much I think we're even on Windows 8 now, are we? I hope so. But pretty much any device you have in your pocket, you can access Kindle books, and the application to do that is free. Same thing, and Beth can talk more about this, we're seeing incredible digital audiobook growth. And again, to me, this is a technology issue. I actually helped run Brilliance Audio, which is a more traditional audiobook publisher, and I could not have imagined this in a million years, and this was 5 years ago. And again, to me, it's the ease of use. It's absolutely the ease of use. How easy it is for folks to buy the book, how easy it is for them to access it. And I want to actually step on that for a second, because Jeff announced Kindle, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And I remember when he said it, he said, you're going to be able to read books on your cell phone. At that point, really, it was BlackBerry. And you're going to be and you're going to be able to read books while you're standing online at the checkout counter. And again, think about that in terms of what other people could be doing and giving them the opportunity to read in a place they didn't before. And the two things that struck me about that was, I can barely read my email on my BlackBerry. I cannot imagine reading a book. And the other thing that struck me is, I couldn't imagine Jeff at a checkout counter anymore. But the BlackBerry thing, or the iPhone thing, has come true. The Kindle thing has come true. I'm on the subway in New York every day, and that's all I see. I see people with Kindles. I did get one complaint from an old-time agent named John Brockman, who was sitting there with his wife in his office, and he told me, listen, you guys have to put an LCD on the back, because I don't know what people are reading. They're reading on a Kindle, and so I can't go up to pretty girls and comment on their book. Looking at his wife. Anyway, let me talk about Amazon Publishing. So we started it actually as a way to give new life to books that, for whatever reason, hadn't found the audience when they were first published. We started with an imprint called Encore. And it was very much a combination of science and art, in the sense that we looked at books that hadn't done well, but had gotten good reviews. I'll use an example. Let's say a book sold 200 copies, and another book sold 200 copies. And they got 4 to 5 star reviews. We think most of the reviews were legitimate, not friends and family. We have to suss that out too sometimes. What we were struck by is, I'm making these numbers up, 190 of Book A, people who had bought Book A also bought a Tom Robbins book. We didn't see that sort of pattern of audience with the second book. What we saw there was, we had a book that we really liked, it had good reviews, and it had the beginnings of an audience base. And so that's how we went about building Encore, hence the name, and found really a tremendous array of books. Many of them worked, some didn't. And eventually this morphed into Amazon Publishing because we saw this incredible tide of stories that were not reaching an audience, and we wanted to help them do that. And so it's grown really remarkably. 47 North, Thomas and Mercer, Montlake Romance, Amazon Crossing, which is our translation imprint. We now translate more books into English, and we don't use Google to do the translation. Real translations, which is really hard. It's hard to find good translators. We are the largest publisher of works into English now in just 4 years. It's amazing. It's also really depressing if it took only that long for us to reach that mass. The idea is there is a real dearth of books being translated into English from other languages. It's apocryphally known as the 3% problem. The idea being 3% of all books originally published in other languages end up in English, and it's more like 45 to 50% the other way. And these are great stories that are successful in other countries, and just because of the barrier, the friction involved in translating and getting the rights and finding an audience and marketing translated books, publishers have tended to stay away. We saw it as a white space, as an opportunity. And actually we've expanded its vision. It used to be bringing books into the English language. You know, as a global company, the idea is to make, as I said in that first slide, all these books available in every language, in every format around the world. And again, aspirational, but it's part of what we're doing. Encore was the first, as I said. We have Amazon's children's publishing, which is Skyscape and Two Lions. We have our own graphic novel imprint. We have a couple of spiritual imprints, Grand Harbor, Waterfall. Little A, Storyfront, I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Little A is our literary imprint. I mentioned Day One is part of Little A. Montlake Romance, as I mentioned, I won't spend a ton of time talking about Amazon Publishing. All of this stuff, by the way, the idea behind this presentation is to give you enough information to go back to our site. It's there, and in more detail and more clearly put than I could ever do it. And so you can learn more about, you know, all the books that Montlake has done and more detail about each of the imprints there. Montlake, as I say, romance, I would say romance writers, and I see Lee over there, but I think as a whole, maybe the most sophisticated group of independent authors that I've run across, with mystery and thriller closely behind. But I'm just amazed, and again, not only amazed at how well they're doing and how forward-thinking they are, but how committed they are to helping each other. This would never happen, but 2 years ago at RWA, our Montlake authors had a breakfast for themselves. I've been in publishing 25 years. I've never heard anything like that. A bunch of authors just getting together on their own. Of course, they had some issues they wanted to raise with me afterwards, but I'll take that. I'll take that. I really will. Short stories. Storyfront is a new portal really focused on selling readers on short fiction. If you go to the site, I think it's amazon.com/storyfront, you'll see how to submit. But it's another reflection of how the technology has made it so much easier to get those shorter pieces of work out. And you'll see a few examples of that as I trip through here. Day One, I mentioned Day One. So the woman who runs Day One was the assistant to old school still editor, actually the woman Vicki Wilson, who wrote the Barbara Stanwyck biography, actually, half of it. She's still got volume 2 to do. Used to be her assistant at Knopf. Young, comes over, she basically owns this project. It's a ton of work. But she created this entire idea. A weekly literary journal with a new story, new illustration, new poem every week. And it's a great incubator of talent. And again, a function of how easy it is to get without, printing costs and all of the things that make shorter works hard from an economic standpoint to succeed. You don't have to worry about that. Kindle Worlds. Another example of empowerment for authors. I think particularly for authors who are really frightened about what it means to be an author and really want to dip their toe in the water. For years, fan fiction has been the ugly, illegal stepchild of publishing and storytelling. As anybody who ever did, a rip-off of Harry Potter or a continuation knows, generally copyright infringing. So what we did is we saw an opportunity to get the rights to these worlds and give anybody the opportunity to create a story using those worlds. So the most interesting one by far, I think, is Kurt Vonnegut. You can write stories, and Hugh Howey has written one, using characters from Kurt Vonnegut. You can use characters from Hugh Howey, I'll mention him in a minute. He's a very successful self-published author. Gossip Girl. You can't bring, by the way, the Gossip Girls into Kurt Vonnegut's world. That's not allowed. And there are guidelines, but again, very simple, very easy, and it's just another cool way to get your toe in the water, and you can have fun with it. If you have, I think we're up to thousands of stories and hundreds of stories, thousands of authors now. And most of this stuff, by the way, is published within a day of submission and made available on the site. You learn about the available worlds. I won't spend too much time on this because, again, it's all very simple. But this is, again, an example of ways to express yourself creatively. Very easy to submit a story. That's what it looks like on the site. Kindle Singles, another game changer. And again, just to emphasize this point about technology making the difference. About 8 years ago, when I first joined Amazon, and I was a lawyer there at the time, we created a program called Shorts. Basically, the idea is, and the idea remains, is to give authors an opportunity to keep themselves in front of their audiences in between the bigger books. I used to call it interstitial work. And so we made these available, these shorts, available via PDF. Well, that sucked. Complete failure. 200 would have been optimistic in terms of sales. But fast forward 5 years later, and with the Kindle ecosystem sort of set up, and the ease with which people can access this work, we created Singles. Basically the same idea, but ported onto the new technology. And it's fiction, it's nonfiction. What's the phrase? Compelling ideas expressed at their natural length, which I had nothing to do with. But here's the deal, actually. I had nothing to do with it, but the Times did a story about the program and called out the phrase as perfect and wonderful. It gives you an idea of why I didn't have anything to do with it. So those are all the sorts of things that have been coming out of Amazon Publishing. I want to talk a little bit now about the independent publishing side. What I've just talked about is primarily stuff that we source it from a variety of places, but most of the imprints, like Montlake, are no longer accepting submissions except from agents because we're finding a lot of what we need and what we want by looking at what people are publishing on their own, which, by the way, just 5 years ago, the idea that one of the ways you could succeed as an author is to self-publish your book, I mean, you would have been laughed at. I was laughed at regularly. And now it actually is quite commonplace. 6 years ago, the very first time I spoke at BEA, talking about CreateSpace and what we called at the time DTP, desktop publishing, I think, before it became Kindle, I used to wear Kevlar during these presentations. Last year, I was on a panel with the guy who runs Trident. And he was extolling the team of authors his agents have been able to develop who started to self-publish. So again, just a whole new world. So here are the ways that you can publish on your own. This is you being the publisher. This is you uploading your book, making it into a print-on-demand, digital, and hopefully an audio. And I'm going to take you through some of this, but not a lot of it, because again, not a ton of time, and it's very self-explanatory as you go to the site. The other thing that's really important about the site is almost everybody has had the same question you've had and has answered it. And again, this goes back to giving back, and the community of folks in the indie publishing world are really good at helping others. In fact, at BEA this year, there was a booth of independent authors, successful authors, who have published on their own, and basically they were there just to give advice to folks who want to follow their path. Really amazing. So it's very easy to do. It's easy to get your book up there, for all of these things. Very fast to market, which, by the way, I don't think by itself is a virtue, though it can be annoying if your book isn't going to be published in 2 years after you submit it, I admit. I also think that in terms of certain topical aspects of writing, fiction or nonfiction, fast to market can make a difference. But fast to market by itself doesn't mean that's a great thing. Again, you want the book to be as good as it can be. You're going to reach a global audience. You maintain control, not just over your rights, but over your cover, your content, everything. You can change it if you want, which means that's a lot of work. But you have that control. As I say, you retain your rights. We do have some exclusive programs, but they're limited in terms of their scope. And usually you get something for it that makes it worthwhile, as should be the case. And you earn high royalties. Certainly on the ebook side, maybe the highest, close to the highest, up to 70%. The royalty options, very briefly, is going to depend. POD I'll talk about more in a sec, but here's basically what the royalties look like. I'll let Beth talk more about, they have a very unique and awesome structure at ACX. But again, 70% if your book is selling between $2.99 and $9.99. So I'll talk more specifically about the text side of it. It is worth noting that, and you'll see a cool slide that's much cooler than this one. About 25 to 30% of the books each week, our top 100 ebooks, are self-published. It's interesting, that number varies, that percentage varies depending on where you are. In Germany right now, it's approaching 40. And that may go up and down. In India, it's about 20%. Again, 20%, so 20 out of the top 100 books that are sold as ebooks on our site in India were self-published. That market just started. It's amazing to me how that's going to grow. This is the key, and it goes back to my checkout counterpoint. This is why we're successful, because you can read this stuff anywhere. And it's only getting better now. You can read it and then get in your car and put on the audiobook, and it's going to pick up from where you left off, and all kinds of other cool stuff that Beth can talk about. But this is what makes it possible for books to succeed in a world, sorry, gosh, I just saw that movie. In a world where there's so many other things you could do with your eyes, your ears, your mind. KDP Select, so it's is one of the programs we use to help authors create their own marketing opportunities. Essentially, we ask you to go exclusive with us for 90 days. And we give you a few tools to help sell books, like the opportunity to give your books away for free, which can be useful. You have a series, maybe whet the appetite, and keep them coming back for more. But you start with that free book. Again, it's not going to work if the book sucks. And you can do that on a title-by-title basis. And I know there are people here in the audience who have done this stuff. In fact, could you raise your hand? Because I'm going to deputize you all to, with all honesty, you guys are going to be able to answer the questions better than I can in terms of what works, what doesn't. And I hope you're willing to contribute in that way. So KDP Select, what I like to say is, it's sort of our laboratory. People forget that, 5 years ago, none of this existed. I can't remember Moore's Law is about, the pace of technological growth, like doubles every. Well, our impatience with the growth of technology doubles with every technological step. And one of the challenges we see is, yes, we've unleashed this tsunami of content. How can we help people find what they want, readers, and how can we help authors find, their audience in this very competitive marketplace? And so we've come up with different tools, giving books away free, countdown deals that show up on the site that sort of create hopefully a sense of urgency amongst potential readers. It's not a static program, KDP Select. It's a laboratory, and we'll continue to throw things in there for people to find. One of the other things we do provide for folks in Select is the Kindle Owners Lending Library. If you're in Select, folks can borrow your book for free. And you get a portion of the royalty pool that we put aside based on the number of books that have downloaded. Yeah?
Quick thing to point out, that's a great example, but you could leave the book at $1.99 or even 99 cents for the whole countdown period, and some advertisers, some promotional sites either charge you extra if your price is higher, charge you extra for their ads or stuff, or won't take you. You don't have to raise the price every day.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it is flexible, and again, that's something I did not know. But, So as I said, was there a hand up over here? No? Okay, great. As I said, this is a much prettier way of saying 25 or so of the top titles every week are indie published. In fact, I can make it look even better. Those are the 25. And Hugh Howe is there are so many success stories, and some are sitting in this room. Hugh is a great, I think, example because he epitomizes, I think, the shift in power for authors. He failed to get his book published for years, published it on his own on Amazon, made trillions of dollars, and more importantly, created such an interest and demand that he was able to wrangle something very unusual from one of the top 5 publishers. A deal where they let him keep his his digital rights, so he continues to get 70% royalty instead of the 25 that they would have paid him, and took only his print. And by the way, from Hugh's standpoint, that is the toughest thing for a self-published author to be able to do, is to get your books into bookstores. I mean, it is hard. I'm not going to gild the lily on that. And just think about, it's hard for traditionally published books to land in bookstores often. If you think about it, it's just tough. But Hugh demonstrates this increasing power, and that's sort of what we call hybrid, but it gets even better than that, because what he's done is become very intelligent on a market-by-market basis. In Germany, he's self-published. In Taiwan, he doesn't know that market. He was able to license to a traditional publisher. And so you see this sort of one from column A, one from column B, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but it really is astounding to me. And I'm not saying that's easy, but again, it demonstrates not only that you all have increased opportunity, but that increased opportunity is having a profound effect on the traditional modes. ACX, I'm going to let Beth talk to, and so I'll just flip through these, but man, it's cool. Listen, this is what's cool about it. It's really hard to get an audio made, or it used to be. It's really hard to get a book translated, though that's getting easier too. What these guys did is basically find a way for you and a narrator to make a deal. And again, that's because of the technology. But you can see that model having application to cover designers, editors. I mean, the great thing about ACX is you actually can, with the help of your friends even, decide which narrator you like more. It's much harder to do with, say, translations. How do you know if that German translation is good? If you knew, you probably didn't need to have it translated. And so there's still things to deal with, but the structure of that marketplace and the elimination of the friction, the challenge of finding somebody who can do this, and then providing a distribution network to hundreds of millions of people, it's a good time. Everyone can be an author, which means everyone can be an author. So 40,000 publishers, millions of titles, millions of authors, illustrators. It's tough. It's a tsunami of content that we've helped unleash. And so, how do you find your audience? And this is one that we are still working on. I mean, we keep coming up with new ways to make it easier to get your book up there. In fact, I occasionally would say we make it suspiciously easy to get your book up there. Again, back to the quality point, but great, your book's up there, we've made that easy. This is still tough. And this is something we're still working out. Now, just to be clear, it's a lot easier than it used to be. I mean, think if you did a book about crocheting 15 years ago. How are you going to find your audience? Right? There is no Facebook. There is no a site for crochet addicts. And I'm not knocking crocheting, just to be clear. And so there are tools now that you have that you didn't have a few years ago, but it's still something, to me, this is going to be independent publishing 4.0, 5.0, 6.0 is figuring out ways to get these stories to the right people. So I'm going to talk a little bit about metadata, go get some coffee. The idea is, well, think about it this way, at least from Amazon's perspective and from the perspective of selling online. I can't give you precisely the number of people who look for books online that used to look for them in stores, but it's a substantial percentage of folks who are now looking for books, not by going into a bookstore and seeing what's on the table or having a particular title in their head that they're going to get. They're instead going onto a website, usually Amazon, and putting keywords and seeing what pops up. That's just the truth. right? And so if you know that a substantial number of folks are looking for books that way, you want to make it as easy as possible for those folks to stumble on your books. And so you need to maximize information about you and your titles. And we have a bunch of tools and services that I'm going to trip through. Again, all of this is on the site, and all of this is easily accessible, and probably explained much more comprehensively, not probably, is, than I'm about to do. And in fact, if it isn't, then we're failing, because the idea is you can go and do this on your own. So metadata is basically the information about your book, your story. Everything from the title to your bio, blurbs, copyright date, publisher, number of pages, all of these little facts about your book are metadata. It might include the table of contents. I told you, metadata, it's just going to make people yawn. I heard that. But metadata is what people are searching against when they come to our site, right? If they're using keywords, they're not searching by covers. They're putting in keywords and a list of results is coming up, and the way those results are coming up is a computer somewhere is matching them. Right? It's more complicated than that, but that's a huge part of it. So maximizing that metadata is super important. Here's the other thing. This is where the metadata, at least most of it, shows up. You may have a great website, and your publisher may have a great website if you're published, if you're not self-published. But at the end of the day, for better or for worse, this detail page, as we call it, the page that people see when they come and search for your book, is your book's homepage on the internet. More people are going to see it there than anywhere else. And so, as I say, it's virtually the internet homepage for your book. And so you want to make sure all of this stuff is as complete and up-to-date as possible. I'm going to show you how to do that in a sec. Also, I'm going to recommend this book, which my girlfriend wrote. It's really good. She runs Soho Press, too. She's much more accomplished than I am. The other thing that we have, though, we have that detail page for your book. We realized a few years back that when people search for authors' names, there was a lot of noise and not enough signal in terms of accuracy, in terms of getting the results that people wanted. And so we realized we needed to improve that experience. And so we created essentially detail pages for authors. It's an author page. And it's meant to do a bunch of different things. One is, it's sort of one-stop shopping for all the information about your book that and you that you might want a potential reader to have. And it includes everything, your bibliography. You can upload your own bio. You can attach your Twitter feed, blog postings, videos, a whole range of different things. Again, all intended to make it easier for folks to find you and your book. It's free. Everybody gets one. Everybody who has a book for sale on Amazon, regardless of the publisher or how it got there, has an author page. Not all of them are going to look like this. Some of them are bare bones. But I like to say, every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings, and an author gets an author page. And basically what we're doing is taking the information from Library of Congress, the British Library, and just creating these very simple pages that you can enhance dramatically. It also helps boost discoverability off the site because we use your name in the URL. And so when people are searching, say, on Google, it's increasingly likely that your author page can pop up. All of this is driven. The ability to play with, add, keep up-to-date content on those pages is driven from Author Central. It's Amazon.com/authors. Everybody who has a book for sale on the site can log in and access this site. And it does a bunch of different things, all for free. As I said, it helps you. We've got tools, pages where you can add your Twitter feed or make sure your bibliography is up to date. It's also a great place to sort of start in terms of getting information about all our services and programs for authors. And it provides a way for you to get to what we call author sort of customer service folks. Generally, when you press the button to access somebody from Author Central, you're getting somebody who knows what the author issues are, more so than how to, work a HDTV. Yeah.
Go back on the previous tab there, the sales info. Why doesn't that give you the info for your digital sales? It's only for the hard copies.
Yeah, we are constantly looking at ways to increase that information. But you're right now it doesn't.
If you go to Kate, if you're,
If you're self-published, you get that information all the time, in real time. I assume you do.
What it doesn't tell you on that, what you're talking about, is the geographic location of the people who buy your book.
No, it's true, and the Nielsen Bookscan data does do that.
I love that.
It's in our interest to continue to develop these tools and make them better. And your point is well taken, and one that I hear about, and it will get repeated internally. I understand.
Well, I'd like to know, I have a book in soft cover and in Kindle on Amazon, and I have a publisher, and I wanted to find out how much money I was getting from my Kindle, and I emailed Amazon, and they said I could only find out that information from my publisher, who pays twice a year.
That is correct.
I mean, that's...
And I think that's one of the reasons that people are frustrated with traditional publishing, and why, that might be a reason to go the independent route.
I was just going to speak to that, what the woman asked.
Yeah.
If you're hooked up with KDP, you get a sales report, you can look at your royalties, what countries are selling in, your charts, everything.
Yeah, I think what she's looking is for more of that direct heat map information, and I'll show that in a sec, that we provide using Nielsen Bookscan data. But you're right, we provide a ton of information. So look inside the book. I talked about metadata. I think this is the absolute most important thing you can do, or at least the bare minimum. You have to do this. So here's the thing about metadata. It is usually just a bunch of information that's limited in its scope. It's, as I said, the title, synopsis, maybe the table of contents, number of pages, category listings, a few other things. Look Inside the Book was created 12, 13 years ago. I was at Knopf, and we were actually one of the first companies to enroll in it. The idea was really, Amazon was looking for ways to replicate the bookstore browsing experience. And so you could look and flip through a limited number of pages, usually 10 to 15%. And there were rules about, you couldn't have spoilers and all kinds of stuff. And it was nice. I never really found it that useful. But here's the thing that is useful, and that we now are making more publicly known. When your book is in Look Inside the Book, all of a sudden the entire text of your book becomes metadata, which vastly increases the likelihood that somebody will find your book, or your book will find somebody. And if you think about it, if you've written a book on mountain climbing, and you have a good substantial section on Patagonia, but you don't really mention it in the synopsis, you're covering everything, that book's not going to pop up, because there's no way for us to know that Patagonia is part of that metadata. If the entire text of the book is in that metadata, that book will eventually pop up, again, depending on other parts of the algorithm. But the point is, if you don't have your book and Look Inside the Book, which is totally free and very easy to do, you're missing a real opportunity to take advantage of that substantial portion of your potential audience that is searching for books online. If you're self-published with us through CreateSpace or Kindle, your book's automatically in there. And for most publishers, I think they routinely put it in. But it's very easy to go and see whether a book is in Look Inside the Book, because it's right at the top of the, Look Inside. It's right on the detail page. And so just to me, that's one of the ways that we're trying to help folks find their audiences. The other thing that I didn't include in here that was referenced earlier, that is part of what we do in Author Central, is we do provide print book sale numbers that publishers generally have never given to their authors, and we update those every 2 weeks. And it's based on metropolitan statistical areas. So you get a heat map, and you can see how many copies of your book sold in each of those areas. It's the sort of information that will drive you batty and increase psychoanalyst salaries everywhere. And both my parents are shrinks, so I'm down with that. It can be obsessive, and authors use it and can easily use it for different things. I used to use the example, I mean, you could go to Green Bay and do a couple of readings and sell 4 books. And you can do the same thing in Miami and sell 20. Okay, does that mean you just fucked it up in Green Bay? Should you go back? Or should you double down in Florida? I don't know how you interpret the information, but the information is there. And there are other tools too, for example, the rankings that we have, which are really indexes. They're not actual, they don't reflect actual sales. But what you can see when you look at the ranking of a book over a period of time, you can isolate, oh, wait a second, it's Brave New World, oh yeah, sales go way up in September and then the rest of the year they go down. Well, you can see how if you're traveling, or let's say your book gets mentioned on a radio show, and all of a sudden you might be able to correlate an uptick of sales with that event. So all that stuff is available in Author Central. And it's only stuff, you can only see stuff about your own book. So it's definitely worth checking out. We're coming down to the wire. Virtual hand selling. I think we call this internally. I actually met the guy who invented this a couple of days ago. He's still at Amazon. Automated and personalized merchandising. It's virtual hand selling, right? Hand selling is what you do. A friend tells you about a great book. You go into a bookstore, and hopefully you have a bookseller who knows their books, which is increasingly rare, unfortunately. And they tell you, if you love Philip Pullman's series, His Dark Materials, you're going to love, hopefully not Harry Potter, because that's the sort of thing you get when you go into Barnes & Noble. You're going to get something that really is compelling. And we try to do that with this. And if you shop on our site, you're inundated with recommendations based on what you looked at, what you shopped at. It can be frustrating if you just bought a gardening book for someone, because then all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of gardening book recommendations. There are actually ways to go into your settings and take that off of your recommended list of books that your recommendations are based on. Every book we sell, virtually every book we sell, is automatically in these programs 24/7. So presumably most people who do publish a book, they do tend to build a website, even a simple one. This is pretty low bore, but if somebody's going to your website, that's a higher opportunity, I think, than most in terms of converting somebody into a reader. And so you really want to make it just as easy as possible for them to buy their book. And you can have books on hand and ship them yourself, but really what you should do is link to your book, your detail page, on our site. You should do it on Barnes & Noble, you should do it in the indie booksellers too, you can do all three. Different people want to buy from different joints. And your job is not to discriminate, let them choose. And you can do it. I think the more the merrier. And the idea is they can easily and quickly buy the book. And you get a few extra pennies from that sale. And if you're lucky enough to have them buy an HD TV during the same shopping session, you'll get 5% of that as well. But it's not about making a lot of money. It's about, again, increasing your readership, your audience. If your book's good, you get them in once, they're going to come back. Goodreads is a whole nother presentation. In fact, we should talk about bringing them on. Goodreads is really a startlingly effective community for many folks. And they seem to have grown in the literary fiction area, which has had the hardest time, I think, in terms of digital penetration for a variety of reasons. I think it'll catch up. But Goodreads has a very strong following in that area. And then just a little more. This is my baby. Amazon has given me this opportunity over the last 5 or 6 years. Look, the idea was we've become very disruptive. Not everybody appreciates all of our disruption. And so we really wanted to give something back to the community in a way that hopefully everybody can agree is worthwhile. And so I came up with this giving program. We give grants to nonprofits. I call them creationist grants in the non-political, non-theological sense. The idea is that they go to groups who help create new authors and new works. And it's a range of smaller publishers, great publishers like Milkweed Edition and Coffee House Press that come out of Minnesota. Poets and Writers, a really strong org based in New York. My favorite, or one of my favorites, I shouldn't pick one, Shared Worlds. This is a camp that meets twice for 2 weeks every year, and high school students work with fantasy and science fiction writers, not to write books, but to create the worlds in which those stories will spring from, whether they be books or graphic novels or, movies. And so it's really sort of interesting and different, and they keep getting bigger and bigger. Anyway, it's a real honor to be able to work with such an array of groups. We've given probably about 250 grants over the last 5 years. So, without further ado, again, this slide, I think I'm just going to let you guys use the presentation. And this really, to me, this is the slide that was at the beginning, and this is the slide at the end. And if you're an author, this is a great way to really dig deeper into each of the programs that I very briefly touched on, as well as a few more. And the presentation is going to be made available as part of the video. So.
I was just wondering if I could add two things to what you're saying. On the author page, each book you will create 2 product pages for it, one for your print and one for your ebook. It's easy when you're first going in there to just do one and forget to do the print one as well.
Well, so the key point there is there are 2 ways you can make your stories available. One is KDP, and that's the digital ebook. It makes no sense not to also make your book available print on demand. The great thing about both these programs is, unlike traditional publishing, you don't have to worry, particularly with a print book, about buying 1,000 copies and keeping them in your garage if you're a self-published author. The idea with print on demand, and there are copies of print on demand books floating around, is we can publish it, we can print it and ship it in 24 hours, just like any other book. And the quality has really reached a level that makes it hard to tell the difference. It's a great way. Many publishers will use print on demand, traditional publishers now, because the quality is so good, as a way to ensure they don't miss out on potential sales. You know, if somebody gets on Oprah and the print copies are gone, POD really makes a difference that way. So you don't have to, and you do have to do 2 different applications at this point. You have to upload it in 2 ways, but there are ways, as you get through the process, you'll be prompted to do that.
Right, and also Amazon's got a new thing, Kindle Comic Creator, which is awesome for anybody doing graphic books. It's an easy way to publish.
And there's more to come. There's a whole, one of our more recent acquisitions is a company called Comixology that's focused on distributing graphic novels. It's really cool. And, obviously there's a real thirst for tools that graphic novelists can use to self-publish.
John, in your experience with publishers that have published your books in the past, given that hopefully people don't throw things away, if your book was published as long as 10 years ago, or maybe even 20 years ago, do you think these publishers still have elements that you can bring out of mothballs and put on a website? I'm just curious because...
I'm not sure what you mean by elements. Are these books that the original publisher no longer has the rights to?
Well, see, I'm not sure. The fact is I sold a book 20 years ago, and it was published for 10 years and then went out of print, and I never decided to do anything. Did you?
You have to go back to them. Right. To check your contract, which I know can be hard to find, but and see what your reversion rights are.
Right.
If they're willing to revert the rights, and they may not, your interest may trigger them putting it into ebook production, and that's a contractual issue, one of the challenges I think authors in some of these long-term contracts face. But if they give you your rights back, you can go wild, not with the cover. You have to create your own cover unless they give you permission to use it. You didn't own the cover unless you created it to begin with. What you're asking becomes a copyright law question.
Right.
So it really depends on who owns the rights.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
When Amazon says they're asking world rights for the ebook deal memos, what rights are they asking for?
I'm sorry?
That's
When
the question is.
you publish on your own, you keep your own rights.
Absolutely. Amazon just publishes it in other territories for you.
We're not publishing it. You're publishing it. We're making it available.
Distributing. You're distributing.
Exactly.
Oh, let's say your ebook is on Amazon and it gets picked up by a publisher who wants to republish it. But you have the reviews on Amazon through your self-published ebook. Can you move those reviews to now the new republished ebook published by publisher B?
Usually, yes. But it can be hard. The ISBN changes. Sometimes there are technical challenges. Sometimes the work changes, too. So it's a case-by-case basis. But the great thing, and that's a great point, is, yeah, somebody comes along and wants to publish your book, us or somebody else, as a more traditional deal, you can pull it down.
What's the difference between Storefront and Kindle singles?
Storyfront is more focused on short fiction. and Kindle Singles is a range of different things. Kindle Singles is a highly curated, very difficult path to achieve as an author. A lot of the content actually comes from traditional publishing houses who want to see it distributed in this particular format. Storyfront is very much, you're doing it, and so it's a very different environment in that sense.
Okay, can an ebook be interactive?
Yes, but not easily. And some of those tools are still being created, but there are interactive ebooks available. In general, I don't think we quite have the tools refined appropriately for you to do it on your own through Kindle.
Since Amazon.
But by the way, listen, I hear about requests for that all the time, and there is no better way to advance the technology than to bring feedback like that you're giving me back to our folks. And it's certainly a popular question.
Okay, since Amazon owns both KDP and CreateSpace, why can't they have better coordination? If you make
Can I just say
this
something?
change-
Yeah, you know, I've been saying this for 5 or 6 years, and to me it's a shining example of how we still have work ahead of us. There are tax and technological reasons why there are 2 different upload paths. We are working on it. I've been saying that for 5 years. It is a really important, I think, refinement we need to make. That said, over the years we've made it much easier to move between the 2 platforms, but yes, it's on my wish list.
And I think this is for the author page. It says, well, why can't you just update it once and have it show up on all of your products? Like, you know, if you update your product description on your ebook, you also have to go in and update it on your print book, rather than just having it automatically populate.
Again, different pipelines, and you're right. It's an awesome question to be raising, and feedback that I'm bringing back every day to our teams.
Okay, this is a question for Audible. How's the YA and children's market looking on Amazon?
Well, first of all, I love it for myself, but also I have a 10-year-old who's a voracious reader. In terms of book sales generally, I don't. Children's and YA is incredibly popular and doing well. In terms of ebook adoption, not as accelerated as we see in some of the genre works. We spent hours sort of dissecting why romance has done so well and literary fiction hasn't done quite as well yet. But I think all of it will level out over time. The YA stuff that I'm reading is just so awesome. I'm sorry to use that word again. I did watch the Lego movie with my daughter the other day, so it's in my head. But I love it. It's vibrant. My favorite festival in the country happens every year now in Charleston, and it's called Y'all Fest. And it is an absolutely magical collection of authors, agents, and real fans from around the country. So I think it's great.
Okay,
video. So exciting. Okay, you spoke about all the freelance, amazing people, like the development editors and so on. Where can we find a secret list of the...
There is no secret list.
Yes.
In fact, it would be outdated as soon as it was made.
Yes.
You have great writers here in this room. Talk to them. They've worked with these people. Go online. Look for people who are writing the way you write, in the areas you write, and look to see who's helped them. Look at the acknowledgments in books. Go to the boards and ask questions. Hey, I've got this, and you'll see the questions have already been asked if you go to the Kindle boards or the CreateSpace boards. So the range of opportunities there is huge. Go to a conference or reach out if you're doing a romance. Reach out to the Romance Writers of America. There's a whole range of different resources you can tap to find that. I do think
we have a 5-page handout or 6-page handout on the table of links that come from a longer book that's 135 pages.
so. There you go.
Thank you.
Again, it's you'll find somebody and it'll be great.
Okay, do you still take books that have good reviews but aren't selling very well and republish them under one of your imprints?
We do, but it's not something we open for submission, so we're sort of trolling those numbers ourselves.
Okay. Let's see. We only have 2 more questions here and then...
Great.
Quick question for John. Amazon has their hand in everything. How come they're also not in distribution to booksellers, bookstores?
Well, we are actually, but we can't force bookstores to take books. We can only make sure they're easily available. And so Amazon publishing books, you see them more and more often in stores, though I don't think in Barnes & Noble, because they don't want to buy, they don't want to sell our books. It is, as I said, tough, but you do see self-published books in bookstores. And in fact, if you publish with us, it's listed in the broader catalogs that go to all bookstores, Ingram, Baker & Taylor, the larger distributors that serve those bookstores. Again, some bookstores don't want to stock Amazon purely on principle. Some just don't have room for it. Most successful self-published authors do a lot of hand-selling bookstore to bookstore. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And the other challenge, by the way, if you're a self-published author, and again, these things are getting better, but we're not there yet, is getting your book into libraries.
Does that also apply the list if you created your book on CreateSpace?
I'm sorry, what list?
You said that you do it's available on
Yeah.
list, the
Oh, yeah.
titles, also for CreateSpace.
For CreateSpace,
As well.
yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
We have a great question here about when will hardcovers become available on CreateSpace?
You know, the technology, as I said, we get more and more impatient as we get more and more technologically advanced. It's a great question. Think about where we were 5 years ago. I mean, I couldn't legitimately recommend, unless you had no other choice, even the paperback, print on demand. And now it's really an amazing and economically sustainable model. Hardcovers are just more expensive and more challenging, so I don't have a timeline for that.
And are there, can you discuss advantages and disadvantages of creating a publishing company? When you're publishing on CreateSpace, you have the option to either have CreateSpace listed as your publisher or your own publishing company.
You know, to me, I think that's about identity. I don't. My non-professional and therefore practically useless opinion would be to use your own publishing company. You want to establish a brand, but I'm not sure. That's a great question to ask 5 or 10 authors who have done it each way.
And the last question, there was a question about exclusivity. If you go Amazon Select, it's a 90-day exclusive contract just on ebook only.
Right.
And after that 90 days is up, you can either renew or publish it wherever you want.
Yeah, and some people don't like the idea of having to go exclusive. They like to make the book available on Apple and Kobo, and I understand that. For others, the benefits of the exclusivity that we attach to the exclusivity are useful. And it is a good, I thank you for stressing, I think I stressed it, but it is 90 days. And so it's an opportunity to experiment. And you don't have to do it for all your books. Just do it for one and see how it goes. But again, your mileage will vary. It depends on the market, the audience, the style of book, a whole range of different things. And I know I sound like a broken record, but honestly, people have gone through these and answered these questions, and they're probably sitting in this room right now.
Right, and also the ads you buy for your promotions. You can't just use the 5 days or the Kindle Countdown and not promote it anywhere.
Right, there are all kinds of things that go along with it. Again, it's part of, it's not yes or no, it's actually thinking about it in terms of all the other things you're doing and how they mesh.
Just a real quick one. The Goodreads reviews, where are they? Is that just from the public? Is that something that the marketing department and supplies? Are they just...
Goodreads reviews, is, to my knowledge, they're just like Amazon customer reviews.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm a big public library fan. Unfortunately, probably your worst nightmare, but when it comes
Why would you say that?
Because I'm not buying them.
Oh, no, listen, you're helping people read, and so...
So
I'm a
invariably,
huge
and
fan.
I do it for research, for voiceovers, for all sorts of things, not only just for reading for pleasure, but invariably, when you look for something, it'll say the LA Library, I'll have good read reviews, and you'll click, there'll be nothing there. Presumably, no one's uploaded or submitted anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to see that page in particular. I will say this. 4 years ago, the last World Cup, I spoke at ALA on a panel about the death of reviews. It was me and the lead reviewer from the Washington Post who had just killed their book review section, and Otis Chandler, who founded Goodreads. And I had fully expected librarians to unload just in frustration. Amazon's disrupted things, now reviews are going away. And really, it was very clear that librarians really depend on those customer reviews on so many levels. It was really eye-opening to me, and the guy from the Washington Post took a lot more heat than I did.
So if you're self-publishing, it's to your advantage to try to pursue that somehow or another, whether you're going to
Absolutely.
give it away, beg, borrow, or steal.
Well, so one example, I know a woman who has had a lot of success. 4 years ago, wrote what I will call chick lit. She'd call it that too. And what she did, and this is very lo-fi in a hi-fi world, she went and looked and found the 100 top reviewers of chick lit books, And you can identify them, and usually those reviewers are reviewed as being reliable. And she drilled down and was able to come up with their email addresses, and she sent each of them a note saying, I'd like to send you a copy of my book. Would you be willing to review it? No guarantee. And 15 people said yes, which is very high for a marketing, a blind mailing like that. And she generated the reviews. 10 were great, 4 were and 1 was sort of really bad.
John, you're talking about customer reviews, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about customer reviews. And so that's how you can, as a self-published author, generate customer reviews. If you're looking for more professional reviews, it's tough, because there are fewer outlets, though clearly the world of bloggers has supplanted in many ways what traditional media organizations were doing in terms of book coverage.
I just have, in terms of Goodreads, I have a girlfriend who's a professional journalist and does book reviews, and she's, I think, paid to review books for Goodreads, so I do think
We
they
do
have
pay
that.
reviewers. Amazon does too. We have reviewers, and you can tell, but those are official reviews.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to need to wrap this up because we have to reset the room for the next panel. So,
Hey,
thank you.
guys so
Thank
much.
you.